Let's sit tall, close the eyes. Just taking in a breath and breathing out. And another. And another. Allowing yourself to soften into the essence of the breath. And soften into the presence, the awareness, and the potential. And then draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Taking a breath in. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Hava Mahi Kavin Kavinam Upama Shravastamam Jestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata anashrinvanuti basidha sadhanam Mahaganapataye namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vaje Bhirvajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Kritachi Shagmam Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. Welcome. Good to see you all here today. Thank you all so much for coming. So today, I thought we'd talk about a very challenging topic. I love that face. And it's not that the topic itself is so challenging. I don't know, maybe it is. But in our embodied experience, it's a challenge. And that's self-knowledge. So self-knowledge and the idea of knowing the self, the idea of what does that even mean, you know? It's such a key component of these practices of yoga. Yoga is the practice of self-knowledge. It's the practice of knowing the truth of the self, inclusive of the connection that is inherent in our being, all of our beings. And our connection with that, whatever name or whatever you call that, the divinity, the source of all that is. So if you ask somebody, so what is yoga? Odds are they'll say, well, you know, it's you get on your mat and do some down dogs, a little headstand, a little sun salutation. You know, that's yoga. And it's like, you know, it's like you go buy the latest Lululemon and, you know, T-shirt with a chakra on it, and you strive for love, peace, and unity. That's yoga. And those are techniques of yoga. The love, peace, and unity is really nice, and that actually is a larger part of the larger picture, but a little misunderstood in the yoga world today. So we'll talk about that. But the asana, the pranayama practice, so the breathing practices, the meditative practices, these are all techniques of yoga. So they're kind of lowercase y yoga. But when we talk about yoga, we are always talking about the uppercase y yoga, the bigger picture, the umbrella that covers everything else, that covers all the techniques, all the goals, all the studies. And what is that? That yoga is self-knowledge. Knowledge of not the little s self, but the capital S self. Knowledge of the innermost self, the truth of the self. The truth of the self is not the truth of yourself, like who you identify yourself as. Walk through the world, identify myself as a surfer, a hiker, you put whatever it is, however, the teacher, the daughter, the son, the husband, the wife, the friend, the mom, however you define yourself, whatever you identify with. Self-knowledge is not the same as that. Self-knowledge can inform the roles that you play in this embodiment, but it's not the same. So when we attend a few wisdom circles, a few yoga classes, we meditate for years even. When we walk away with the question of, I've been doing this for a little while now, how come I still don't get it? Get it. You ever ask yourself that? How come I still don't get it? It's because you're still identifying yoga with yourself. The self that is identified by the role you play, not the truth of the self. That right there is a lot. How do we differentiate and still integrate? How do we look and understand the little s self, the capital S self, the little y yoga, the capital Y yoga, and all of these other amazing concepts? How do we look at them, and how do we come to a deeper, more profound integration that really does truly honor what yoga is? And there's a lot of different things that we can do, but it really kind of comes down to one, and one only. Everything else is bits and pieces of that. The solitary, standalone answer is let go. Let go. And then let go some more. Let go of your self-identifications. Let go of the importance of the roles you play. Let go of the expectations that you have on others. Let go of your fears. Let go of your graspings. Let go of violence. Let go of jealousy. Let go of greediness. Let go of anger. Let go of harsh judgmentalism. Let go of anything that takes you away from the knowledge of the self. Let go of it. Well, that sounds like spiritual bypassing if ever I heard it. No, we're not talking about spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is saying, those things don't exist. And then continuing with the poor behavior, right? So this is not spiritual bypassing. We're saying let go of it. And what that means is, if you experience anger, you have a reaction to somebody or something and you experience anger, that anger is experienced in a particular moment in time. And maybe that moment extended out for 10 minutes. The actual event lasted for a moment or two. The experience of the immediate anger, maybe 10 minutes. But the impression and the memory of the anger and the constant retelling of the self, of the story of that anger, years. Years. So every single person in this room still has something, maybe 10,000 somethings, that happened a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that you're still telling yourself about your anger. You haven't let it go. And yet, if somebody were to ask you, so what about that situation when you were 16, 15, 13, 12, 24? Oh, I let that go. But you know that person's just still such an ass. You haven't let anything go. You've lied to yourself about it. You want to let it go. That's the natural. See, freedom is the innate nature of yourself. Freedom. You don't want these bondages. You don't want these chains. You don't want these things. You want to let them go. But the problem is complicated at best is that you exist in a world that doesn't really support that, letting go. You exist in a world that says, remember when you were 15, 16, 24, remember what they did? Well, you got to get even. You got to beat them. You got to show them. You got to do this, do that, do the other thing. You live in a world that teaches you how to hold on, not how to let go. And then the crazy absurdity of it all is that this human-made world teaches you how to hold on and then lies to you and tells you that that's letting go. By coming into a place where the ego is so empowered, not in a great way, so empowered to say, I don't care what you say, you still suck, and I'm better. And then tells you that that attitude is actually letting go, when it's not. That is the clingiest attitude there ever has been. There's a great cartoon, some of you have heard me reference it before, where it's a woman and she's sitting in meditation, and she's got a little thought bubble, and the thought bubble says, oh, my light is shining so bright, and hers is so dim. That's not enlightenment. That's not self-awareness or self-knowledge. That's grasping. That's holding on. That's maintaining poor behavior, but with a different disguise. Does that make sense? So this work of yoga is learning about the disguises and peeling them back a little bit at a time. You can't just take them all off. You can't just say, no more disguises. Because the disguises are very integrated into who you think you are. And so so in the 1970s, there were this is a crazy story. In the 1970s, there were these experiments down in Washington, D.C. with like the CIA or something like that called the White Room Project. We talked about this before. And I was a teenager at that point in time, and I really wanted to go do this. Because what they were looking for were individuals who had certain types of mind power, and they were looking to see if they could amplify these mind powers. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and so I wanted to go do this. My mother said no, and I was mad for years. But at any rate, the person who was some way, shape, or form in charge of that project, when we came here, someone said to me, oh, you should totally come and hear this program by this person named Dale so-and-so. And I said, that name is like so familiar. And I'm thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I said, did he have something to do with the White Room projects in the 70s? And they were like, yeah, he was one of the directors. I went, no way, that is so cool. I'm such a fan. But anyway, not really. That was like so totally, but yes, but no. And long story. Anyway, so that's my own conflict. So the gist of these experiments that they were doing is that they would take a person and they would stick you in a white room. And you couldn't talk to anybody, and you couldn't watch the news or any television, and you couldn't listen to the radio, and you couldn't read any newspapers. You couldn't do anything except sit in that white room and maybe meditate. And in some way, what many of these types of experiments that have gone on for a long period of time found out is that when you strip the person like that and stick them in a white room, they go a little nuts. They lose touch a little bit with reality, and sometimes a lot. So don't do that to yourself. Don't put yourself in a white room. Don't strip yourself of everything that you think you are in favor of some ideal, because that's not going to turn out to be a healthy behavior on your part. Instead, study yourself. Study your life. Study who it is that you think you are. Come to know yourself, because I guarantee you, many don't. They have a version of themselves that they want to be, but that's not really who they are. So if you can look at who you appear to be, who you want to be, what it is that you're hiding on the other side of that, in the face of society, what you're hiding. And if you can come to peace with all of that and let go of it, you'll know who you really are. It'll come naturally. But if you pick and choose in a way that says, well, I can keep hiding that part of myself, nobody will know. I can just keep lying to myself about that particular thing, nobody will know. You're not going to know. You won't come to know the truth of yourself. And you will not come to yoga, the capital Y yoga, of self-knowledge. You don't have to discard everything, throw it away. I'm no longer going to be a mother. I'm no longer... it's so funny because when I took my sannyas vows, somebody had said to me, conversations are interesting things sometimes. Somebody had said to me, so you're ready to put to the side the role of mother and grandmother. You're ready to say, no more family. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, sannyas, you're going to take your vows of renunciation. No more family, no more friends, no more this. No. I said, excuse me? That's not the point. Of course I'm not going to put those roles into the garbage can and, get rid of them. That's my daughter, my son, my grandchildren. I love them dearly. Well, then you're not really renouncing. Then, right now I'm trying to renounce my anger. It's not about throwing things away. It's about learning enough, so much about your own self that you can actually play those roles in a much brilliant, more radiant way. In a way that is truly coming closer and closer and closer to a reflection of who it is that you truly are. The spirit within yourself that's not burdened by the fears, by the unbridled emotions, by the jealousy, by the greed, by any of these other things. They're still there, sure, of course. There's not a human alive who doesn't experience some kind of emotion. But the difference between people is that some allow that emotion to carry them away into the place that they don't want to go to because they know it's full of violence. And others just simply acknowledge it and say, you know what, right now I feel jealous. Right now I feel greedy. I feel like I'm lacking something. Right now I feel angry. Doesn't mean I have to act on it. Doesn't mean it has to carry me away into a place I don't want to be. Anger is a human thing. You're going to feel it. So just because you feel anger doesn't mean that you're not making progress on your spiritual path. What you do with the anger is defining whether you're taking a few steps back or a step forward. What you do with that anger. You let it carry you away. You give yourself to it in a way that creates violence, empowers violence. Or do you acknowledge it? Look for its root. Where is it coming from? What is this reaction all about? And then try to heal the wound that it sprang from. Because anger is not the wound. Anger is the little sprout that grows into a great big tansy tree. Brahmani laughs with me because she knows we had this tansy tree in the garden, and it's a wonderful herb. Don't plant it in your garden because it takes over. And still, I don't even know, 5 years later, still pulling the little sprouts out, still pulling them, joyfully pulling the little sprouts out. And anger can be like that, right? Anger takes over if you allow it to. So instead you sit with it and you recognize it for what it is. And you say, what is the soil that this grew from? Where is the wound that this came from? And you address the wound. And then the anger takes care of itself. It just does. It's like if you have an open gaping wound in your hand or your arm, you tend to the wound. You clean it up, bandage it, put a little antibiotic cream on it, whatever you have to do, so that it heals. Anger doesn't heal. The wound it came from has to heal. And then the anger won't be an issue. It doesn't mean it won't still be there from time to time. And this is the thing I think that a lot of people don't understand. They say, well, I've been on this path for a while and I'm done with my anger. And I'm just sitting there giggling on the inside because I'm like, man, no, you're not. Nobody's done with their anger. The question is, what's your relationship to it? Is it still got the reins of your life under its control? Is it still pulling you around? Or do you just acknowledge that it's there and do what you're going to do otherwise? Sit down and do your meditation. Sit down and do your mantra. Practice your japa. Get onto your yoga mat. Go feed the hungry. Go do something else. Make a choice that doesn't feed, that doesn't make that wound infected, that doesn't allow it to continue on. Make a different choice. And then eventually, that little aspect of anger won't be an issue anymore. Something else will come up. Because anger is really complicated. It's like a weaving, So I love when people say, oh, I healed from my childhood trauma with my parents years ago. My mother was just no good, this, that, the other thing. And it's like, but if you're still saying to yourself, my mother was no good, you haven't healed from that. So it's still that anger, that disappointment, that whatever resentment is still manifesting itself. As long as that's the attitude that you have toward that person and you can't see, well, I forgave her a long time ago. Not if you're still calling her names. You didn't. No, you didn't. You're just wearing a different disguise. You're disguising yourself as someone who says they've healed. But you haven't, because a healed individual, a person who is making progress on that path of healing, doesn't have a need to call people things like no good. Because they recognize that, you know what? Maybe in that point of time in my life, that individual was having struggles. And maybe I felt the brunt of that. But that doesn't make them no good. It means that they're pretty much like every single other human being on the earth. And we really figure that out when we grow up and have our own kids, don't we? Oh my God. So many times I would sit and look at Ed and go, oh my God, I feel just like my mother. Because we say, I'll never be like you. And that's not true. Right? So when we can look at and we can see every single person is living with their own particular difficulties, including me. And those difficulties are not so far away from each other. They're very similar in nature. Different details, very similar struggle though. And so that individual, their emotions are out of control, the same as my emotions have been out of control, the same as your emotions have been out of control. So if we call them no good, what we're actually saying is, I'm no good. And if that's the message that we give to ourselves, yoga is nowhere near us. Nowhere near us. Because yoga is knowledge of the self. Knowledge of the truth of the self, the capital S self, that understands the child is a role we play. The adult is a role we play. And we either play that role exquisitely well, healthy-wise, or exquisitely well, illness-wise. Mental illness, physical illness, whatever it happens to be. However we play that role, whatever we do with it, whether we dig a ditch that's deeper and deeper and deeper in suffering, or we build a ladder and climb ourselves out of it, it's all a role that we play. And the less attached that we can be to the role we play, the more light will be shown upon the truth of our own inner self. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, but what about the work? Because does that mean it's okay that a person is, abusive or chronically demeaning? Or no, it doesn't mean it's okay. That's not what it means. Like I said to start, it's not spiritual bypassing, because we're not saying ignore. We're saying let go. One example, and there are 10 million different possible examples, but one example is this. We're in a relationship with an individual who has a tendency to be demeaning. And we say, why can't they just change? Why can't they just change? Why can't they just change? What's the purpose of you saying, why can't they just change? Is it so that they suffer less? Or is it because you really want this person to tell you how great you are, to pick you up, to share with you that you're perfect as you are? So most of the time when we're looking at someone else and we're saying they're no good, their behavior is bad, most of the time that's coming from a place of resentment because they're not telling us how good we are. Because they're so stuck in their own suffering, they don't have room to build us up. So letting go means we let them off the hook. We come to realize that we don't need other people to tell us how good we are. That's seeking happiness outside of the self. That in fact, what we need is to do our own damn work. Go inside of our own self and tell our own self, the little s self, how good we are, how good we could be, what work we need to do, where our behavior is violent, greedy, jealous, etc., and so on. And to make the commitment to change those things within ourselves. So we leave that person alone. We don't keep egging them on. We don't build false expectations. We don't tell them, you're responsible for my misery. Because nobody's responsible for my misery, except me. But what about the person I'm in a long-term relationship with? Shouldn't they be loyal, kind, tell me they love me every day, kiss me before they leave the house, never forget my birthday?
Yes.
No. Those things are superficial. Because those things don't really mean very much if the underlying acceptance isn't there. I mean, we all like to hear someone say, I love you. Absolutely. We'd all like someone to not forget our birthday. My husband always forgot my birthday. Always. For the first 15 to 18 years we were together, he never remembered my birthday. Not one time did he remember my birthday. Yeah. And now those of you who knew my husband know he was an amazing human being. He loved me. I have no doubt whatsoever. We had a beautiful relationship, but he did not remember my birthday. Now, one reason might be because we got married on October 1st and my birthday was October 9th. Right? So he had an idea that it was somewhere around our anniversary. If he didn't turn the dates around, then it was something else. He thought it was like later in the month or whatever. So he came up with his own solution after about 15 years. Birthday month. We're going to celebrate the whole month. I said, okay, we can do that, But here's the thing. It's a silly example, but it's not really, because most people would say, no, you have to remember my birthday. It would not be good enough to have a birthday month, acknowledging that he just doesn't remember the date. For whatever reason, it doesn't really matter, But now we're going to have a wonderful month together. That would not be enough, because he's got to remember the date. Do you see what I'm saying? Let go of the date. Enjoy the celebration whenever it comes to you. Enjoy the celebration without the expectation that it's for you and you only. I love in yoga, your birthday is not about you getting presents. Your birthday is actually about you giving. So it's quite common that on an individual's birthday, they'll do something for someone else rather than receive for themselves. Because when you're walking in the world, cultivating relationships and investing in some way, shape, or form in attachment in those relationships, it's very healthy to remember this is not just about me. This is not about what I can get from this person. It's not just about how many times this person can remember my birthday, tell me they love me, or not leave the house without giving me a kiss first. This birthday is not about them making me happy. This life, rather. This life is actually about me understanding where I stand in the way of my own happiness and then healing my own wounds so that I can be a healthier person in the midst of all of my relationships, every single one of them. So when I took my vows of renunciation, no, I did not say, I'm no longer a mother, I'm no longer this, I'm no longer that. No, I did not go live off in a cave. That might be okay for some people, and it definitely is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not the meaning of renunciation. Renunciation is saying, I am going to let go. I'm going to let go so I can love even more profoundly. I'm going to let go so that I can accept even more profoundly. I'm going to let go so that I can know even more profoundly a greater truth than what the little stories of the mind and the attachments of this human experience tell me. Does that make sense? What thoughts or questions do you have at this point? Yes.
All right, I'm going to try to get this. So you say letting go of the attachments and all that stuff, and I think, well, that's easy to say, but like, what exactly do you have to do? I kind of like, I know you have to journal, I know you do the meditation and all that kind of stuff, and then it just comes.
You don't have to do journaling. You don't have to do meditation. They're helpful. They're helpful. What you have to do is let go.
I know. Like, I don't really know. Honestly, I don't think I know exactly what that is.
Yeah, so it depends upon what it is you're talking about. So let's just say, for example, gossip. Gossip is very violent, right? Because gossip is typically very judgmental and hurtful. So that's something that we got to let go of. The tendency to be hurtful and judgmental and to gossip. So we say, okay, so I'm not going to stand around the water cooler Fridays at 4 o'clock and catch up on the weekly stuff anymore. Okay, that's not the only place you gossip. When you're walking behind someone in a store and you make a mental comment on their clothing, their age, how slow they're walking, their body size, their nationality, their cultural identity, that's all gossip. Stop it. Don't walk behind somebody and say, oh, look at what they're wearing. No. Instead, change your story. Let go of the tendency to insult and say something else instead, like truthfulness. That thought of criticism is with me. I am not going to embrace that thought. Instead, I'm going to say, may you have a peaceful, healthy day with as little sorrow and suffering as possible. And then you continue on. And now you don't have to go home and say, you're never going to believe. Like, we so want people to hear us, to I don't even know, the word is leaving me, but to acknowledge our existence, that this person who didn't say anything to us, who didn't even look at us, that we made up this whole story in our mind about, we're going to now make that the story of the day. We're going to go home, and whoever's there, our kid, our loved one, we're going to say, oh my God, you had to see it. I saw this person in the store, and they were wearing the most hideous outfit ever, and da-da-da-da-da, and it's just da-da-da-da. And there's this whole attitude that goes with that. And then somebody gives us a call on the phone. We haven't heard from them in a little while, and we pick up, we're like, oh, hey, how are you? They're like, how was your day? Boy, is that a loaded question. How was your day? Oh, well, I was just at the store. And remember when we were in high school and like those people in school who just didn't know how to dress? Well, guess what? I ran into one of those types of people today. I was behind him in the store. And you just keep telling yourself, you keep reinforcing the tendency to violence. Stop it. And when someone says to you, how was your day? Don't take that as an invitation to like fully offload your story onto them. Instead, just say, it's a day. It's a day. And think of something positive, not rose-colored glasses positive, but something uplifting to say. Instead of inviting someone to invest in the drama that you're investing in, turn it around. And maybe ask them, what was the last brilliant thing you experienced? Tell me something special that happened to you today. Tell me what your dreams are in your life right now. Get people to talk about something other than ridicule, other than gossipy stuff. You know, that's a start. It's a start. So the start is to turn away, but by acknowledging, I am having this thought. No, I'm not better than this thought because I'm having this thought. This thought is right here in my mind, so I'm not going to pretend to be on some kind of high horse that doesn't have these kind of thoughts. The thought is there, but in this moment, just like, you know, in the morning you choose to have coffee or tea, I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to make a choice, and then I'm going to continue trying very hard to make the choice that's aligned more appropriately with nonviolence. And so that's where you begin, is by starting to, number one, acknowledge what's there. 2, acknowledge the choices that exist, because there's always a plethora of choices. And number 3, make a different choice. And sometimes the different choice is not the better choice. Sometimes we just put ourselves into this really deep, dark place of choices. But eventually you'll get to one that feels lighter. Eventually you'll get to a choice where you'll feel it. You'll be able to very easily acknowledge how obviously lighter it is, how obviously nonviolent it is. And then just keep working to make choices in that same avenue, that same vein. But just know that making one choice one time in one situation does not cover all of life. Well, but I forgave that one person. So what? You forgave one person. That's wonderful. But 10,000 people. Have you forgiven all the rest of them yet? You can't expect your relationships with 10,000 other people to be healthy because you're trying with one. So you can't expect every moment of your life to be blissful and full of peace and love and unity. You know, like the t-shirts say, just because you said those words once. It's an ongoing work. It's an ongoing effort. And for as long as you live, you will not be past it. Because you're an onion with many, many layers, as I like to say. And peeling back those layers is really messy. They were making something in the kitchen not too long ago. I think for the New Year's Eve, maybe. What was that we had on New Year's? It was so good. What was it?
The Wellington.
Yes. So we had vegan Wellington. And for some reason, in recent years, if I'm in the room and people are cutting onions, the waterworks just come on. It's crazy. From time to time in the past it would happen, but now it's like, and so I'm standing in the room and somebody's cutting onions on the other side of the room, like back there where Summer is, and I got one whiff of it and I was like, oh my God, I have to leave because the onions, they get to you every time. So we're like that. You're going to cry. You're going to experience frustration. It's going to feel like someone's peeling off a bandage slowly, very slowly. Because that's what happens as we do our work. Is that every layer of the onion brings forward something. And that's not a curse. It's actually a clearing, if you allow it. Cry if you have to cry. If you feel frustration, stomp your feet, spin in 10 circles, and then whatever. But don't orient it toward another person. Don't look at someone and say, you're making me feel frustrated, because they're not making you feel frustrated. Their behavior may be problematic, but they're not making you anything. You're allowing yourself. You're making yourself because of your own choices. I'm choosing to feel frustrated because I have not yet healed the wound within my own self that gives me the strength to adhere to my own chosen ethics in this relationship. So go ahead, keep demeaning me. Keep demeaning me, and I'll just keep yelling back at you. Tell you what a rotten friggin' person you are, how no good you are because you demean me. But isn't that demeaning? So all we're doing is making our wounds deeper. But I need the strength to walk away. No. You need the strength to acknowledge your role in the relationship. And once you know that truly, then you'll be able to behave healthfully, at least a little more healthfully. Maybe that entails walking away. Maybe it entails counseling. Whatever it entails is what it entails. It's different for everybody. But it starts with acknowledgement. And then all the work that follows from there. And don't expect it to be done overnight because you don't live in a white room. You will never. Even if you say to yourself, I'm no longer angry, all that means is you're going to really be angry sometime soon. Really, really angry, like explosion angry. Because you denied it. Denial is a pressure cooker. I know I went off on a tangent there, didn't I? Yeah. No. I hope that was supportive. Mm. It would be really nice if someone could just say, here's the happy pill. If you take this, everything will be okay. But life isn't meant to be that way. Life is not meant to be that way. If life was meant to be that way, then there wouldn't be gunas. What the heck is a guna? Mm-hmm. A quality within nature. And there are 3. Passion, lethargy, and neutrality. There wouldn't be 3 gunas in nature. There would only be neutrality. There wouldn't be passion or lethargy. But as long as we're in this embodiment, there are 3 gunas, and they are always battling each other. And one is always dominant in the physical and the mental, emotional. And that's when doing this work consistently, every day, brings us to a place where we know that there's something else. There's something that lies beyond the battle of the gunas. And that is the reconciliation of them. It's even beyond neutrality. It's this self-knowledge. It says, I'm walking through this world, which is in a constant battle with itself. And yet, there can still be peace within me. And the peace within me can empower me to answer the call of what is needed in a world that is embattled more than I simply complain about the world being embattled. Does that make sense? We use so much energy complaining, gossiping, talking, right? So much energy. And we walk away thinking that, well, that felt good to get it off my shoulders, but actually you didn't get anything off your shoulders. You just reinforced a particular behavior that really hurts. Hurts you, hurts others. Any of you ever have somebody gossip about you when you found out? How'd that feel? Great? Wonderful? Fantastic? Something you'd like on a regular basis? No, of course not. So if you didn't like that, I know it's like so cliche, so now I feel like my grandmother. If you didn't like that, nobody else likes it either. So don't do to others what you would not like to have done to yourself. Right? Isn't that like a golden rule? And it's not only from the Bible, it's from actually every single religious spiritual teaching that there is. Do unto others only as you would have them do unto you. But to even begin to understand what that statement means, you need to start letting go of your attachments so that you can see more clearly exactly what it is that you're attached to. So that means I love coffee. While I'm drinking it, I'm like, it's great, it's fine, I love it, it's tasty, the perfect latte is wonderful, one where the milk is burnt is not so wonderful, lots of reactions going on there, and they're just all jumbled together with the rest of my reactions in the world. So I don't really pay attention to them, so I might not realize just how much I like coffee. And I do like coffee. I accept it now. But the moment that I let go of it on the first level of letting go, I will find out quickly how much I like coffee and exactly how attached to it I am, because feelings of desire will build up. I really want to go get a really good latte. Where is the coffee shop? And if I'm being mindful, paying attention on purpose, I'll see those reactions creeping up. And I'll recognize how they push and pull me in multiple directions. And then I will either give in or I will make a different choice. Making a different choice isn't easy, though. Not in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes the choice might be a more harmful choice, and sometimes it might be a less harmful choice. Maybe I go for the fruit water or the tea, and maybe that's a better choice. But just because I go for the fruit water or the tea doesn't mean that I'm not still thinking about the coffee. And just to be clear, I have not given up coffee. Nope. I have given up coffee in the past. I have let the physical aspect of coffee go in the past. And then I've taken it back again. And then I've let it go. And then I've taken it back. And I've gone through all the guilty throes associated with that. And I'm not saying that the guilty throes aren't still there. But I have on some level decided that it's okay. Because it's really the only thing that I do that's like not the healthiest thing in the world for me. And I limit my intake. But there's still guilty throes there. There's still, just drink the water. In all honesty, I don't like water. It doesn't have a taste. So you can't know what your relationship is to a thing until you start letting go of it physically. Then you'll find out how attached you are to it. That will tell you where your work lies, what it is that you need to attend to. Then you get to make the choice of if you're going to do that or not. Are you going to attend to what needs to be attended to? Or are you not? Choose carefully. Be mindful about it. And don't try to do it all at once. It doesn't work that way. A little bit at a time. One thing at a time. Not everything at a time. More questions, reflections.
I have one.
Yeah.
So specifically when anger comes up, and let's say that you have your self-discipline, you have self-awareness, you're not taking things personally, but there's this space in between when you feel the anger and you have all those teachings from your past that you're trying to acknowledge and act in, and then at what point, I'm trying to figure out at what point do you twist to express it in a creative way that's forward moving in your own life versus repression, where you're repressing it, kind of like what you're saying, we're not ignoring the fact that it's there, but how do you navigate that space in between that's not repression, not expressing it in a negative way, but still trying to find that positive, creative path where you're using your anger as a tool?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a big, big, big question. So just kind of a couple of little points. The first one is saying to yourself that you have learned these tools and actually using them are two different things. So I have learned when I feel angry that if I sit and breathe mindfully, that the anger will come down a little bit. Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. And it's true. However, anger is the symptom of a wound. So, yeah, you might be able to subdue the anger a bit, but are you addressing the wound? So go deeper than that. Don't just try to get rid of what's uncomfortable. Right? You don't just try to get rid of it because it's uncomfortable. I'm going to breathe it away. Go away. That's avoidance. That's nothing but avoidance. That's utilizing the spiritual practices that you've learned in order to avoid feeling the discomfort. Don't avoid it. Welcome it in. You're like, okay, anger, I hear you knocking on the door. Come on. Now let me follow it down. Where does it lead to? What's the root wound of this anger? Well, he didn't say he loved me before I left the house this morning. That's not the root wound. That's a leaf on the stem. That's not even near the root. Why does that bother you so much? Why does he have to say to you constantly, I love you, 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 I love you? Why? Follow it. And eventually you get to a point where you realize that the root is elusive. It's not easy to get to. Because then we start making these blanket statements like, well, when I was a child, it must just be that my parents didn't tell me they loved me enough. That's the root. No, it's not. No, that's not the root. That's another leaf on the stem. What's the root? Well, the root must just be something so simple as I'm in this human body and it's never satisfied because my ego's not healthy. But that's just another leaf on the stem. Maybe that's a little part of the stem, but it's not the root. You got to get down to the root. And the root is different in every situation, but it's also similar because on some level it comes back to our belief system. And if I, on any level of my being, no matter how forwardly thinking or progressive I think I am, if on any level of my being I think that there is value to me in you telling me that you love me, then there's a deep wound there. Because there is, and this is a controversial statement, there is no value at all in you telling me that you love me if I do not even love myself. So all I'm asking you to do is put another Band-Aid on it. Put another Band-Aid on it. Put another Band-Aid on it. Put one of those fancy Band-Aids on it that look like, I don't know, tie-dye. Put the ones that have, Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore. Just keep putting Band-Aids on it. I love you is a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid. Now you got to take all those Band-Aids off and do without it for a little while. And find out what it is that you believe about your own self that makes that statement coming from another human being so darn necessary. How does that make you valid? It doesn't. It cannot. And it will not. And how do we know that for a fact? Because you keep freaking asking for it. If it led to your validity as a human being and a person, you would have no need to ask for it again after you got it once. Because it would have filled the gaping wound with healing light and energy. But it doesn't. It doesn't. It feels good for a little tiny bit of a moment. But then fear comes forward. Fear. Say it again. I need to hear it again. I don't trust myself. I need to hear it again. I don't like myself. I need to hear it again. I don't care for myself. I need to hear it again. You keep telling me that all my poor behavior is okay, that how I treat myself horribly is okay, that how I view myself horribly is okay. You keep telling me you love me because then I'll know I'm okay. So we have to get into the core beliefs that we carry about ourselves and why we need so much from others. We don't need anything from others. But do you know, it's so beautiful and amazing when we get to a point where we do start to see that. We start to recognize it and we stop asking so much from others. It opens up a space within ourselves that we can actually begin to be present. And when that happens, we say, I love you, with a different understanding. And we receive the words, I love you, as more of a gift and less of a padlock on the belief systems that I'm not enough. It's less of a lock. It's less of a chain. And it's more of a celebration. And the celebration moves beyond words at some point. But it can never move beyond words or actions. As long as we are still on some level adhering to the belief system that we carry through this life. A belief system that is very deeply based in our wounds. And no matter how much we say it, no matter how many times we have it printed on a t-shirt, love, peace, and unity, yay. They are beautiful. But they're only concepts. And that's all they'll ever be. Concepts that seem to be very elusive until we practice letting go. Let me let go. So number one, I can see exactly how attached I am. Number two, I can learn where my work is needed to be done to actually let go. And then number three, so that I can experience just a little bit more freedom. Freedom. If every single thing that you are attached to right now, if you were a magnet, and just imagine this for a moment. You're a magnet, and everything you're attached to is metal. You wouldn't even be able to move. There would be zero freedom there. Zero freedom. Because you'd be so bogged down. It's easy to visualize that, right? Yeah.
So, the roots, would you say then, this is kind of yes or no, the roots then are your beliefs about yourself?
No.
So that's where I'm confused about the roots.
It's part of it.
It's part of it.
It's part of it. You're getting closer to it now. The beliefs are strong, and they're definitely, they're part of the stalk. You know, they're definitely part of the stalk. Where do those beliefs come from? Don't blame it on your mother.
That's what I was delivering to. I'm kidding.
Don't blame it on society. That's definitely part.
Mm-hmm.
What you've been taught, how you've been educated is part of it. A little bit of the answer is the root has to do with your own tendency to believe your story. With your willingness to consistently reinvest in that which is easier to believe. And that which is habitual. The root is you.
It's the story.
No.
No?
No. The root is not the story. The root is in some part your relationship to it.
Okay.
Why do you give into it so easily? So you see, it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So there are aspects of the root, but then there are also aspects of what comes from the root. And as you uncover the belief system, why the belief system is there, And initially we blame somebody else. It's just human. We say my mother, my father, society. It's not wrong, but it's also not correct. But as we unroll our own role in that, I wrote a song years ago called Independent Thinking, Independent Thought. And in there it was all about thinking independently. Independently of what? Independent of my own tendencies. Independent of my education. Independent of what society's expectations of me. How strong am I, or relevant to my own true self am I, that I can think independently of all that I've already learned. And the gap in between those two places is the root. That's the root. Our own weakness, our own flaw, our own tendency, our own lack of responsibility. All these things. There's 10,000 different names for it. Those are the root. Now, it's not blame. It's not blame. Because how do you take a person who never learned about resiliency and say you're wrong for not being resilient? You can't do that. It's not blame. It's process. It's process. Does that make sense? It's process. So don't look at yourself and be like, oh my God, I'm so full of blame. No, you're not. Not at all. You're in process. But learn about your process. Learn about it. Make better choices. Not better like good choices, because you won't know that. You don't have a right to the outcome. You only have a right to the work. So be an explorer. Who is it who are the two explorers? I can never remember their name. Yeah, thank you. You told me that previously too. I think you answered that. Yeah, Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark, if they were not adventurers, if they were not willing to go out into the wilds, we would not know so much about what we know. So now you have to do that. You have to be Lewis or Clark. Pick your person. Go out into the wilds of your own mind, your own heart, your own life. Be an explorer. Map the landscape. Find what you find. And simply be in process. But be in process knowing that the less you are attached to anything that you discover along the way, the more you will find out about the truth of your own self. But the more that you say, oh, I have to have that, and I got to have that, and oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's great. Let me hold on to that. I finally found myself. Let all of it go. Just have the experience and continually move toward the clear, the openness. You'll get there. It might not be this life, but we'll get there. No, for any of us. Yeah. For any of us. Yay. The work goes on. All right, I think we're done with time a little bit. So let's sit tall and close the eyes. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. And with a deep intention to continually peel back the layers and to meet whatever is there. The tears, the laughter, the sorrow, the joy, the beliefs, the new education, the new understanding, all of it. Just keep reminding yourself, I am a work in process. And these are all just little things along the way. Nothing for me to hold on to. Nothing for me to be attached to. Take a breath in. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's so good to sit with each and every one of you. Now, coming up next, we have a little bit of brunch, and then at 1 o'clock, for those who are staying, we'll meet in here for the Ayurveda. And we do still have a couple spots left in that today if anybody's interested. Today we talk about Dinacharya, which are the daily practices and why we need them. Oh boy, it's going to be a long, wonderful conversation. All right, be well, everybody.